Rube, who thought that week 4 we'd be talking about this being a very important and tough game against the Jaguars?
Yeah, and this is, it's Jeff Lurie loves the phrase nonlinear progression, and this is the way the NFL is, and it's the way the league wants it. Teams can go from really, really bad to really good. We don't know how good the Jaguars are yet, but they sure look majorly improved. It's what makes the league so fun. You can turn things around in a hurry if you make a couple good moves.
Yeah, it's when you start that, when the schedule comes out and you go win, loss, loss, loss. That's not the way it works out. Some of these games are either easier or harder by the time you get to them.
And this is one of them.
This is the Eagle Eye podcast, by the way. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. If you enjoy the podcast, I want to throw a plug out there right away. Go ahead, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. We appreciate all the love on that. We do have a bunch to get to today. At the end of the podcast, we're going to each give our under-the-radar offensive player. We gave a defensive player on Tuesday. We want to talk a little bit about the defense still, though. Linebackers in particular, and Fletcher Cox. And we want to mention Dallas Goedert. But first, Rube, this is a tough Jaguars team. Have you had a chance to look at their first few games? I mean, this is not the Urban Meyer Jaguars.
No. Doug's come in, and, there was always talent there, but it was kind of a lost cause with Urban Meyer running the show, and you just never got to see it, except when they were playing the Colts, I guess, at the end of the year. They're fast. They're fast and athletic on both sides of the ball, and physical. They're fundamentally sound, and they got a young quarterback who's really spinning it. And but their defense is, they had 9 takeaways all last year. They have 8 in 3 games, and they're leading the league in takeaways, and they're very good on both sides of the ball. Mm-hmm. And you look at that offense, and they got a young quarterback who's kind of found something working with Doug Pederson. Doug's really good at that. They've we laughed how much they gave Christian Kirk, but he's making plays all over the place. They got a really underrated running back, I think, in James Robinson, who I believe was undrafted a few years ago. He's really, really good. And on defense, I was talking to Britton Covey today about his former college teammate, Devin Lloyd. Start he's off to.
Yeah, he's playing great.
Yeah, so I don't know if he's kind of Micah Parsons of last year, but he's close. He's playing
well.
He's
not, yeah,
not yet, but he's kind of making that kind of impact right off the bat, and so there's no real obvious weaknesses when you look at that team. They're getting it done on both sides of the ball, and the last 2 weeks they've played as well as anybody. So went into San Diego and just beat that team up.
L.A.
L.A. Oh, my bad. Well, you know what I mean. Jack Murphy Stadium, wherever they were. L.A. SoFi Stadium, not Jack Murphy. But, yeah, you know what I mean. They really took it to them on the road. That's a good win going across the country on the road against a pretty good team and handing them a lopsided loss. So are they ready to come in here, second straight week on the road, beat a second straight good team? I don't know, but it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, it looks a lot harder than you thought even a few weeks ago. Doug Pederson deserves a lot of credit. Mike Caldwell.
Zeke.
That defense is firing right now, and it makes you think, like, he comes from coaching under Todd Bowles, and look back at last year. What was the one defense that really, really gave Jalen Hurts struggles?
Yeah, and coached under, he was here. He started his coaching career with the Eagles, played for the Eagles. Really sharp mind and, real disciple. It's interesting. You look at the top defenses in the league. Tampa's number 1 with Todd Bowles. The Niners are number 3 with DeMeco. The Bills are number 4 with Sean McDermott. The Jaguars are number 5 with Mike Caldwell, and the Eagles are number 7. So there's like Eagles coaches and former Eagles coaches all over the place. A lot, a bunch of them started under Jim Johnson, but that's a defense that could give Jalen some try. I think we'll learn a lot about where Jalen really is on Sunday.
It's an aggressive defense. They attack, they get after it, and Devin Lloyd fits into that so well. He was the NFC. Jalen Hurts, by the way, was the NFC Offensive Player of the Month. Devin Lloyd was the NFC Defensive Rookie of the Month. AFC Defensive Rookie of the Month. So he's playing very, very well.
Britton Covey, who obviously played with him at Utah, said he's the most unselfish player he's ever been around. It was interesting. He said they're apparently best friends, and he said he's just he's not surprised at all with what he's doing, and he's got that same mentality he had in college, where it's all about the team. You like hearing that. Sounds like a good kid and playing at a high level. He's got 2 picks already as a linebacker, 8 takeaways, and obviously they played the guy in Indy, so they got a few against him, but
that'll help.
It is a I don't know if they're more improved on offense or defense. I think they were last in the league in defense last year. So it's
many people counted Trevor Lawrence out, though,
which is stupid.
I mean, this is a guy who a couple years ago we're talking about was like one of the biggest can't miss prospects, generational talent, and to think that he didn't do it as a rookie, so he's never going to do it. I mean, he was set up to fail.
People will never learn. Imagine having your first head coach be a guy who doesn't even fly back with the team.
Yeah.
I mean, so he didn't have a chance. I think Doug is the perfect coach for a young quarterback. You saw
for a team that's young.
And for a team that's young, but in particular quarterbacks. And, the job he did with Carson right off the bat. I mean, he was he was a starter as a rookie and played well. And by year 2, obviously was a elite guy. And, Jalen spoke yesterday about just how important it was for him to have a former NFL quarterback as his first coach. And he said it was really good for me. And, Doug and Trevor Lawrence Doug went in there on day 1. And he said the first thing he did when he got the job was he called Trevor Lawrence. Yeah. So let's get to work. And I think Trevor Lawrence probably he couldn't have been happier. I mean,
last coach probably didn't have his number.
He probably didn't. So he's a different guy. I think last year he had 9 touchdowns and 14 picks. This year he's got 6 touchdowns and 1 interception. It's a different guy.
He's playing great.
And he's big. He's tough. He doesn't run. He doesn't move. But he's got a rifle and he's got weapons. Yeah. Got a pretty good slot receiver.
Yeah, and Christian Kirk.
And
and the 2 guys outside, Zay Jones and Marvin Jones. Not Marvin Wilson. You probably Big Marv isn't running routes. Yeah. That's a pretty good trio of receivers.
Yeah. So it's an interesting challenge. In a way, I think
it makes me laugh thinking of Big Marvin Wilson with that big beard running routes.
Yeah.
Run the skinny post, Marvin.
I think in a way it's good. You're sitting at 3-0. I don't think this is a team that would take anyone lightly, but if it was Jacksonville last year, you might have a tendency to kind of look past them, but you're certainly not going to do that now.
Yeah, we had a chance to speak with Doug.
Yeah, it was great.
On Wednesday. It was good to see him. We had a Zoom, so we actually got normally it's a conference call with the opposing coach. This time it was a Zoom, which was nice to get that FaceTime with him. And credit to the Jacksonville PR staff. They let that go much longer than a typical opposing coach conference call. They lasted around 17 minutes. Pretty much all of us got a question in.
Yeah. It was good to see him.
It was good to see him. He looks,
so different, right?
You think about the 2020 version of him. He needed that. We've talked about it before. He needed that break so bad. And he looks like prime Doug Pederson.
He really does, like 2017 Doug Pederson. I was really struck by that more than anything he said. Really was just he looked like a different person, and we haven't really seen him. I mean, he did a couple pressers.
Yeah, I got a chance to chat with him in Indianapolis a little bit and at the owners' meetings. Then you could tell too. He's just.
But now he's 2 months into the whole thing.
Yeah.
And he looked recharged and energized, and he was smiling. He was happy. He even said, we asked him what he learned from being here. He said, don't be stressed all the time. Yeah. Have more fun. And I think that's huge for him. I mean, because he was not having fun at the end. And
no one was having fun.
There was a lot of reasons for that. No, that's true too. But he talked about what he learned from his experience here and how important those lessons are to starting in his second job, which was really interesting. So perfect for him, perfect for that team.
Yeah. And what's interesting? It was a very good question. I think it was Zach Berman asked him, because we've talked so much about how that the fresh start helped Doug, but the question was, do you think it helped the Eagles just to have a fresh perspective? And he agreed that it did. I think after that long, sometimes the message gets a little stale, and no one thought Doug deserved to be fired. Even, I mean, Jeff Lurie, when he fired him, said he didn't deserve to be
It wasn't a matter of deserving. It was just the best thing.
Yeah.
For everyone.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Was that, Doug didn't, I mean, he warranted another year.
Sure.
Certainly. Yeah. But when they had an obvious disagreement about the future of what the coaching staff and what the team would look like, it led to it. And I think it was a really good thing for both sides. And that's why, sure, Doug would love to win this game, and there's probably a little added incentive for him, but it's not like he left here on terrible terms.
No, I think that's accurate. Yeah. I think, and it'll be nice. He's going to get a great ovation.
Yeah. I mean, I apparently some people have been asking if he's going to get booed. He's not going to get booed. He's going to get a standing O.
Yeah.
And I'd imagine they'll give him some sort of before the game.
Maybe they'll let him look at the statue.
Put him. He said he's never seen it.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah. I don't know if I've ever seen it.
I've never seen it.
Yeah. It's not that hard to believe.
But he's in it.
That's true.
We're not in the statue. He is. But yeah, he's a good guy. I think he's a hell of a coach. Gannon had some interesting things to say about him as a play caller, just how he has no tendencies, which is really interesting. It makes him hard to defend. And that's why that offense was so dangerous in 2017. I don't think they had elite talent. They had good talent, but they had an elite quarterback for most of the year. But he kind of was treading new ground and being aggressive and fourth down stuff and trick plays. And as we know, did you know when they converted that fourth down, the touchdown to Devontae, it was their first touchdown on a fourth down in the last 2 minutes of a half since the Philly special.
Okay.
Just thought I'd throw that out there. And who's the idiot who looked that up? This one. But yeah, he wants to win this one bad.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to punt on Sunday.
That could be. Could be. Andy came in here with the Chiefs. I think was it his first year in KC or first? I think it might have been his first year.
I wasn't here.
Yeah, I think, and he got a really nice warm ovation. And Doug was on that staff.
Mm-hmm.
I think this will be. I mean, people are still split over Andy, and understandably, but I think this will be 99%.
Yeah, I mean, the guy delivered the first trophy here.
So, yeah. You can't boo this guy. You got to be crazy.
That was actually my first matchup. Was Jonathan Gannon against Doug Pederson. That chess match. That'll be fun to watch. You want to go through some of these other ones?
Sure.
We mentioned Christian Kirk, and that's part of the game planning because Doug does a really good job moving Kirk around, but majority of his snaps come in the slot, and that's a big matchup for Avonte Maddox, who I think has played very well.
Yeah. Size-wise, it's a challenge, but that doesn't seem to bother him. Mm-hmm. He does go outside a good bit. I haven't seen the exact percentages. I'm sure you have them there. But, he's always been really good. The contract kind of took people by surprise, but
126 of 198.
Okay.
Yeah.
So about 2/3 of his snaps. So yeah, it's
and they overpaid for him.
Yeah.
But who cares? That part of it's over. Now he's a player on the field and he's playing well.
Playing really well. He's a good player.
Yeah, he is. He never had a 1,000-yard season, which is why when we saw that contract, everyone, what the heck are the Jaguars doing? But they got a reliable target for their young quarterback. And they had to overpay because they're the Jaguars.
And he's got 6 catches in each game, 117, 78, and 72 yards. So, I mean, he's the guy that, that Trevor Lawrence is looking to. Although I don't believe he's leading them in targets. I think Zay Jones actually has, let's see. Anyway, Zay Jones has more targets. Yeah, he has 19. And no, he has 27. Kirk has 27. Zay Jones has 24. Anyway, obviously, Christian Kirk's more of a big play guy. Zay Jones is a possession guy. I really like James Robinson. I mean, he's a guy you don't really hear about in the conversations about good running backs, but he averages 4.5 yards every year, 800 rushing yards, and he had a 1,000-yard season as a rookie, undrafted. Good receiver, caught like 50 balls his rookie year. So, the Eagles haven't been great against the run. They've been good at times.
Well, I mean, they were They had one bad. It's only 3 games, but they had one awful game against the run, and then they stopped.
Washington ran it better. I mean, Washington's final stats kind of didn't look great because they had a 10-yard loss in there, 11-yard loss. But I thought Washington ran it better at times than I expected. But it's a game where I think if the Eagles are going to have a chance to win it, they're going to have to, make Jacksonville one-dimensional.
Mm-hmm. And knowing Doug, he might do that for them.
That's fair.
Another matchup here: Jordan Mailata, Lane Johnson against those 2 edge rushers, who, I mean, both top 10 picks. Trayvon, number 1 overall, and then Josh Allen, number 7 a few years ago.
Yeah.
Trayvon Walker's funny because he was a guy that, when the Eagles had those 3 picks in the teens way back when, I thought, maybe Trayvon Walker would be a good fit. And then he started skyrocketing and he ends up being the first overall pick.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a big one. And boy, Lane is playing. We don't talk enough about Lane. I mean, he's just playing at an insane level right now.
We forget how good he is. He's so steady. It's a shame that we don't talk about him more.
Well, let's start talking about him more. And this is the team he got hurt against 3 years ago. He's finally healthy. And I mean, if he doesn't make the Pro Bowl, well, it's 3 games. But he's playing as well as he's ever played. Yeah,
I agree with that. And then you have Mailata on the other side, who's played very well too. And Mailata's still getting better. That's the thing. It's like he's still as good as he's been. He's still figuring this game out. Yeah, and sometimes you forget that because he's played so well. But
I was talking to who's a running back on the practice squad,
Brooks Kennedy.
I was talking
Kennedy Brooks.
Yeah, I was chatting with him at his locker today, and Mailata walked by. And I said, imagine playing rugby and having him coming at you like that kind of. Imagine playing rugby against him.
I'd prefer not to.
Yeah, that's a scary thought. But, so it's a big challenge for those tackles, though. You're right.
Yeah. How about Miles Sanders in this game? Been a little banged up in practice, was limited on Wednesday. Didn't have a great output against Washington. Didn't need to, but also didn't. And now this is a pretty good run defense in Jacksonville. They're giving up 3.1 yards a carry. And look, maybe you can look at the overall numbers and say, well, they got ahead in a couple of those games and teams are forced to pass. But the average tells you, well, no. I mean, that's a problem. Even early against Indianapolis, Taylor had nothing against him.
Yeah. No, you're right. They're good at everything. And they've been bad for so long, and they just have good draft picks. They've drafted well. They have good draft picks all over the place, and they're fast and physical. It's a tough team to run against. And, you would hope that this O-line is able to establish some kind of running game, which they really didn't against Washington, against a good run defense. So let's see if they can do it.
Yeah. And then my last one is Jamal Agnew, the return man against the Eagles special teams. And look, they've been okay covering on punts and kicks, but they've had a few big errors, those special teams groups, in the last couple weeks. They really haven't lived up to their end of the bargain. One big blunder against this guy, he could take it to the house. So, yeah, it's a little concerning.
He's got like 6 career returns, I think 4 punts.
And 2 kicks,
And 2 kicks, yeah. You got to be careful with him. No doubt about it.
Tough game.
Yeah, we'll get to our predictions, but and then you're looking at going out to Arizona, which that's a tough game. So it's not a must win. It's a little early for that, but I think we'll learn a lot about this team.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I'll tell you what, playing 30 minutes is not going to be enough to win this one. I think you're not going to be able to just kind of go in a shell in the second half and just wait for the clock to hit zeros. That's not going to work against this team.
You're probably right.
They don't make enough mistakes to hand it to you that way.
All right, let's move on a little bit. I want to plug a story I'm working on, Dallas Goedert story. He is very good. That's basically the story. Dallas Goedert's good. But it's more than that, because this is his first year as the unquestioned tight end one. Obviously, last year it was kind of weird.
This time last year, Ertz was still here. Is that weird?
Yeah, it's very weird. And I think Dallas has handled his career so well, because he had to wait 3.5 years to become the guy. He was a second-round pick, clearly talented enough. I mean, he was a top 10 tight end in the league, and he's playing second fiddle to Zach Ertz. And he waited his turn, and now he's getting a chance every week to show how good he is. And he's a top 5 guy, easy.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And it's kind of similar to how Ertz had to wait. Selleck was the guy. I mean, it was really similar. Goddard's 4th in yards among tight ends. Ertz is 9th right now. Ertz has more catches. Goddard's got more yards. That's the way you expect it to be.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about Goddard is that 15.3 yards per catch. I mean, there's like 2 tight ends in history that have been able to run with the ball as much as the way he does. I mean, he's just
his touchdown catch
he just runs over.
In Washington was unbelievable. He kind of like sidestepped, jumped through 2 guys trying to tackle him. He's such a danger in the open field.
Yeah, and I'd like to see him do more of that. Just short passes, high percentage passes, and let him trample people.
Yeah,
because he does it.
Let me give you a detail from.
And he catches everything. He's got his targets to catches ratio is the best in the league among anybody at any position over the last 2 years.
Yeah,
it's crazy. 11 catches on 14 targets. It's nuts.
Yeah. I want to give you a detail from my conversation with Jason Michael, the tight ends coach, that I don't know if I have a spot for it in the story, but I find it interesting, so I can tell it here.
Let's use it.
Yeah, we got to use it some way. I asked him if he thinks Goddard's passing numbers have been hurt in some ways because of how good a blocker he is. It's kind of a theory I've always had, but, wanted to ask the guy who knows. And he said maybe in some instances, but actually – his ability as a blocker has opened up different types of opportunities for him as a pass catcher. He's like, if you have a tight end who's just such a one-trick pony, all he can do is receive, then teams kind of know. Like, you put him out there, he's a receiver at that point. But when you have a guy who will zone block, then you kind of leak him out on a screenplay, those are opportunities that a guy who's, Darren Waller is not getting that opportunity. Right. He didn't use that name. I'm using that name. Sure. But like a guy who's a receiver, basically,
Grant Calcaterra
doesn't have that opportunity because he can't set it up in the way the Eagles are able to set up things for Goddard. And I just found that interesting.
No, that is interesting. I think that's probably true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've been really impressed. I had talked to a bunch of his teammates about his leadership style and how much lighter he's able to keep everything. Dallas did admit to me, though, that, he really enjoyed playing under Zach and with Zach, but he's a little freer now, knowing that he's the guy. He said in the back of his mind, it was always like, man, if I mess up this play, they might put Zach out there. It might become his play. And he doesn't have to worry about that now. So
it was awkward last year for a couple of reasons. And I think Dallas had kind of emerged, in 2 years ago. We kind of knew he was on the brink of being one of the league's best tight ends. We knew Ertz didn't want to be here. He was not happy. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot going on. I think they made the best of it. And
what are you going to do?
But it was, it was awkward for Nick as a play caller. He was pretty much the play caller at that point when Zach was still here. It was awkward. You would just see them replacing each other, but it wasn't really situational as much as, well, we got to get him some run. And you can't, they didn't, it was.
And you like shoehorn 12 personnel in just to get them both on the field, not for matchups or anything. It was just like, you got to play them both.
Yeah. But they've had some great tight ends here. I mean, to go from Selleck, what year was he drafted in?
07.
07 is correct. So, they've had Selleck, Ertz, or Goddard for 16 years.
And just from
and Jason Dunn before that.
And just from a pure talent standpoint, not obviously Zach Ertz is above them all right now, but from a pure talent standpoint, you can argue Goddard's the most talented.
Yeah. As a full, Ertz blocking was never his strength, but what a great receiver. I don't think Goddard has a problem with drops. He's had a couple, but one really notable one, but Ertz didn't drop anything.
Yeah. And he had, his spatial awareness was like next level, so settling in the zone. So I don't want to take anything, but I'm just talking from a purely talent standpoint. So, and that's obviously Ertz is still the legendary figure. He'll be still
playing well.
Eagles Hall of Fame. He's, possible Hall of Famer, Pro Football Hall of Famer. It'd be tough, but possible. And Goddard has a long way to go to get to that level in his career, but he has that potential.
Ertz has 651. I think he needs to get to 800 catches to be in that conversation.
Okay.
But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah.
Eagles are lucky to have Goddard. Great pick. Great draft.
And at the time, remember, they drafted Dallas Goedert 3 months after Zach Ertz caught the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they did. And the most underrated play in the Super Bowl, that fourth down pass. I don't know how Foles got rid of it. Guy was bearing down on him. He kind of was backpedaling, and kind of lofted it. And Ertz got clobbered, just got past the sticks. They don't convert that, the game's over. They lose. Unbelievable play. You deserve. I like talking about tight ends. That was good. You deserve a car that thrills you. And they're both, all three of those guys, just great guys too.
Are you going to start the read from the beginning now? Or are you going to pick it up how do you do that?
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we've got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store and nissanusa.com today.
Well, tight ends, they've had a long history of good tight ends.
It's a good transition.
Linebackers, not so much.
No, kind of a sordid past of, the Jamar Chaneys and Moses Fokus and Eric Wilsons and
Brian Roll,
Joe Mays, a cast of thousands.
Keenan Clayton.
But they got it right finally. And it's been really interesting to watch Kaiser White and TJ Edwards really take ownership of that off-ball linebacker position, a position that it's always been kind of a work in progress here. And in the Super Bowl year, they got really good play from Camus and Jordan Hicks before he got hurt, and Bradham. But
that one snap from Donnell
Ellerbe. I knew that was coming. But yeah, they're just playing so well together. And I'm actually doing a story on them, so you can find that on our site on Friday. I've just been really impressed with the way they play together, the way they communicate. They're kind of interchangeable, but not completely. They overlap.
Yeah, it's funny because they really, on paper, they have such different skill sets, right? Like TJ's the hard-nosed inside sure tackler, and Kaiser's a former safety coverage guy. But they both show ability in the area where they're not the most proficient.
Right.
Which is important, because if you don't do that, you can't be on the field.
Yeah, and it gives Gannon so much flexibility, and they don't leave the field. Yeah. I mean, when Kaiser leaves the field, sometimes I think he's played close to 80%, but when he does, there's not another linebacker coming on the field. So they're out there, and
really same with TJ. Well, when he leaves the field, it's only happened minimally. Kaiser, it's the dime package, and Gannon has been very clear they're not a dime team in the past, and they're still not.
Right. And TJ's, I think he's improved in every area, but his coverage has come so far. He's a decent coverage linebacker. I don't know.
Still, he's gotten better.
He's decent. Yeah,
he's decent.
He's good.
I still think offenses are trying to get him in coverage.
I'm sure. But he's not a liability anymore.
Yeah,
I agree. He was. But he's just they're both sure tacklers. They're both smart. They both talked about how they just hit it off starting in OTAs. They just watched film together. TJ said today in the locker room, we see the game the same way. And when we come off the field, we always agree on fixes, on what's working, what's not working. He said a play doesn't go by that we don't communicate pre-snap and after the snap. And Kaiser said, for a new guy coming in from day one, TJ just kind of took me under his wing. Look, this is what we're going to work on. And they just kind of hit it off really from the get-go. And I think that's such a big thing. Like, obviously they're both talented individually, but they just work so well together. And I think that's what we're seeing.
And it's really, you don't know that until you put them together. Like, think about in any job, right? Like, you bring someone in and they have to work really with one other person so closely.
Yeah.
And you don't know how it's going to go. They might hate each other.
Yeah. Like us.
Yeah, like us. That's what I was getting at. They might hate each other, and then you got to figure it out. But especially in the world of football, where it's like, if you're TJ and Kaiser screws up, It can make you look bad. It could take money out of your pocket.
Right.
And so the fact that those two guys are on the same page so quickly helps.
And Kaiser was he was saying, I think I don't know where the quote is, but he said, we're really the same. We approach the game the same way. And he said really the whole room is humble and hungry and has a chip on their shoulder. Everybody has a chip on their shoulder, but it's a really good relationship. They're both also unsigned after this year. So
that's an interesting dilemma.
Yeah.
A lot of guys on this team are unsigned after this year, but it's also the fact that Nakobe Dean is waiting in the wings, and you would think he'd have a chance to start next year. So there might only be room for one of these guys to get signed.
Room for one. I would think it would be TJ, but who knows? Yeah, I mean, money's going to have something to do with it. But I would think I'm guessing TJ and Nakobe will be the starters next year, but who knows?
A long way to go before.
Long way to go.
And Kaiser would like to be here. He's made that very clear.
Yeah. But also, if you're giving the quarterback, $1 billion, it's going to be hard to keep everyone.
True. Yeah, that is true. Had a chance to catch up with Fletcher Cox yesterday. I've been very impressed by his level of play through 3 games, and only through 3 games. We know that. He's starting to look like maybe the Eagles didn't make a terrible decision. When they signed him for $14 million, I was more than skeptical.
Sure.
I thought they just flat out overpaid for a guy who was past his prime and was still a good player, but wouldn't live up to that contract. I thought they did it because
he's Fletch.
He's Fletch. And look, that's not a terrible reason, but it's also not something you want to get in the habit of doing.
Yeah, I think I was exactly where you were, and I'm not so sure how he had his doubts. I'm not so sure how he didn't have his doubts as well, because he hasn't been the same player, and the decline has been steady over a number of years.
And it dropped off last year.
He really did. He also, he wasn't hurt enough to not play, but he wasn't healthy, and he is now. For a guy who's almost 30, I think he turns 32 in December or November, but he talked about really finding new ways to take care of himself this offseason, get in better shape. So, and he has. I've been really very surprised. He might be the most surprising guy. I mean, him and BG. I mean, both for different reasons, but they're both older guys.
We'll see how they hold up.
Yeah, but we'll see if we're saying this in week 13. But so far, so good. And Gannon's doing a great job limiting their reps, both of them. BG even more. He's older and coming off an injury. But Fletch has been fantastic. And I was talking to Jordan Davis about him yesterday for a few minutes. And, he said he's been so good with just so unselfish and team-oriented and helping me and helping all the young guys, whether it's Marlon or whoever. He said it's meant so much to him. Yeah. I mean, he's in here to take his job. And Fletch is...
Well, Jordan's also doing a lot of the dirty work. Fletcher's probably pretty happy he doesn't have to do anymore.
That might be true as well, yeah. But it tells you what kind of guy he is. And all the veteran guys, I mean, they're just they don't hesitate to take younger guys under their wing and show them how the game is played and how to be a pro. And that's a special thing. And it's not all that common.
Yeah. Look, if Fletcher doesn't turn it around, he was much better halfway through the year once him and Gannon kind of figured things out. If he doesn't turn it around, he's probably not back here right now. Who knows what he's doing, playing somewhere else. But we've talked about it here before, so I don't want to go into it too much. But him and Gannon figuring it out last year was huge.
Yeah.
Not just for the two of them, but for the entire team.
Yeah.
And I give them both credit.
Right.
And Fletcher's admitted a few times now that, like, last year he got in his own way. It was a mental thing. It was there was a lot of frustration about the team was struggling, the defense was struggling. Fletcher was unhappy with his role in the defense, and he felt like he was struggling in part because of that. So remember when he said, they don't pay me to play screens?
Yeah.
I mean, that was he gets the benefit of the doubt because of how good a teammate and player he's been here for a long time. That quote, man, that was like, this could tank the whole team.
Yeah.
And the fact that it didn't, it's a credit to him and Gannon.
And Nick.
And Nick, too.
Yeah, because I'm sure Nick had a role in that whole process.
Yeah.
It's early.
You think it was like the three of them were in a room, and Fletcher would look at Nick and be like, Nick, tell Jonathan.
Like on Gilligan's Island that time when the professor, when Mr. Howell and Mrs. Howell weren't speaking. If Fletcher, it's early, it's only 3 weeks. There's a lot of football to go, but if he has a Pro Bowl season, sure helps his Hall of Fame chances too. You got 7 instead of 6.
Yeah.
And he's got the name.
He's got a real shot.
So, yeah, it's good to see.
On the last podcast, we talked about under the radar offensive players or defensive players. So I picked Avante. You picked Bradbury. Let's go on offense and each talk about a guy we think has been underrated on that side of the ball. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Isaac Seumalo at right guard at a new position, coming off an injury of his own. It's just been really solid. And another guy we don't really talk about too much, but I just think they're so lucky to have him. Like he's like the one guy in that O line that, there's 2 Pro Bowl guys. There's 2 younger guys who are ascending that we talk about all the time. And he's just kind of a guy who comes in and does his job quietly and doesn't complain. Another team first guy who didn't hesitate to change positions when it was clear Dickerson wasn't moving from left guard. And he's just a pro, and he's healthy. He's playing well.
Yeah, he is. And even like if Isaac Seumalo is the weakest link on your offensive line, that is a damn good offensive line.
Or maybe on your entire offense.
Yeah. Probably right.
Yeah, if you ranked him 1 to 11,
yeah,
he might. Who knows? He might be 11.
Yeah, which is, that's a pretty high bar.
Yeah. Who's yours?
I'm going to go with a non-starter, Zach Pascal, who has kind of started to vulture some snaps. He's really done all year, but on third downs, he does a lot of the dirty work as a receiver, and he also plays special teams. He's the up back on his personal protector for whoever the punt returner is. Almost got in trouble in one game because of it, but he's contributing on special teams. He's a good blocker. He has sure hands. He's caught a few third down completions. And he's a guy who he knows his role isn't going to be huge, but he means a lot to the team on practice days and game days. I think it was a nice addition. Yeah,
I agree. And I think he catches everything too.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good receiver. He's never not going to have a lot of catches,
and that's why they rely on him on third downs.
Yeah, he's a good little third down receiver.
You can block and have sure hands. You find a role for you on third down.
Yeah, and he couldn't be more different than Quez.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just kind of like a Jason Avant type.
Yeah, it's sort of like how if Isaac is your worst starter, it's pretty good. If Zach Pascal's your 4th receiver, it's pretty good.
The thing about Avant was their 2nd best receiver, so that was not ideal. But if Avant was your 4th best, that's great. So yeah, Pascal's good addition. That's a good one.
Yeah. All right, it's prediction time. You don't have to give me a score, but which way you leaning in this one?
I'm leaning Eagles. I do think it'll be one of those games where I'm scrambling to finish my 10 observations, and I'm cursing because it's there's 2 minutes to go and it's a 3-point game. But I think I'm not sure Jacksonville's ready to win back-to-back road games against good teams.
They've got a lot working against them. Back-to-back road games. Their whole state is dealing with the hurricane right now. We don't know how that's affected their practice schedule, and guys are worried about their families. It's a big distraction.
Yeah, that's true. But I think they're very good, and I just don't think they're ready to win this game yet.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pick the Eagles in a close game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to be relatively close. This is not a layup, but I'm kind of going to pick the Eagles until they show me why I shouldn't. I'm at that point.
Yeah, that's what I did in 17, and I was right like 9 straight weeks.
Yeah, they are. They're looking like a juggernaut, and I'm not picking against them, against a team that's still figuring out how to do this. And the Eagles are legit. They're now the favorites coming out of the NFC, and maybe that's too soon, but they're right there. And I think they're a legitimately good team. I think they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender at this point.
Yeah. I would agree. We'll see what we're saying Sunday night.
We'll see. All right. If you enjoy the podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. That's it for Rube. I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you after the game on Sunday.